Hi everyone out there in Mental Health Warrior Land. It's Annette here with my lovely guest Leslie, and I will run the intro and then we will get right into our lovely topic, and we're going to get into her book. It's all about domestic violence and how it affects our mental health, and I hope you are tuned in. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we'll be right back after this intro. And we're back, and welcome. Hi, Leslie. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah. So welcome to the greenhouse.
Thank you. It's beautiful here.
Thank you. I have I renovated it about 4 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And it was a dumping ground for my guys.
Oh.
And I took one look at it, and I like having my own kind of space for my mental health, right? So I said to my father-in-law, I said, "What are you guys just doing with this? It's space for junk." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do with it?" And I said, "Turn it into a sanctuary for me to relax and enjoy and invite people." And he said, "Fine, do what you want with it." Took me about 2.5 years to finally get the feel of what the space actually could do for me and for others.
Right.
And so I use it as a mental health break for people. And I invite them in, and they sit and they can color. I'll give you a tour later.
Okay.
And they can color, they can do yoga, they can meditate, they can paint, whatever their heart desires. They can come and plant stuff.
Yeah,
they
just
can
anything online.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a godsend for me, because I struggle with my PTSD from time to time, depending if I get a trigger.
Right.
And so if I come out here and I color every morning, then I'm managing it.
Right.
So when Adam approached me, who is the founder of the Mental Health Warriors, he approached me to be on the show.
Right.
I said, yeah, I'd absolutely love to. And so when we got talking and I did my show, he said, "Would you like to be a warrior?" And I said, "Absolutely," because that's right up my alley. As I've been growing and developing as a person, it kind of fit that I would be the self-care warrior.
Right.
Yeah. And so everything I incorporate into the shows that I do is all about self-care.
Right.
So eventually we'll get around to me asking you, so what does self-care look for you?
Yeah.
But what I'd like you to do first is introduce yourself.
Okay.
Tell a little bit about your story. Share freely what you feel comfortable with sharing.
Okay.
And then later we can introduce your book.
Okay. I'm my name is Leslie Hughes. In my past life, I had gone through a marriage of domestic violence with my son, who was very young at the time. And when I was stuck in that situation, it was as if there was no way out. Like, well, I'm just going to sit here and live this, because I kind of got myself into it and there's nothing I can do about it. So so I was in that relationship off and on for maybe 6 years. I don't even know, to be honest, but I learned a lot about people while I was in that situation. I learned that there are a lot of people around that are willing to help you, whether you know them or not.
Yeah.
As long as you reach out and you don't just keep everything to yourself. There's so many places you can go for help. And I finally decided one day to make the move. My son had been mistreated by this man just constantly. At first, he was like, the greatest guy, and he wanted to play hockey with my son and,
Yeah.
you know, on his best behavior, but you could see it changing. And it it really took its toll on me, mentally, emotionally. I gained a lot of weight. I went up to like 229 pounds.
So it affected your
And
health,
oh
your
yeah,
physical health as well as your
and
mental.
you know what? And when somebody's telling you how terrible you are all the time, you just start shoveling whatever in your mouth. Anything that makes you feel better, right?
Yeah.
So I did that and gained all kinds of weight, and I ended up becoming diabetic over it, and I became almost like a hermit. I never went out and socialized. I stayed in my little apartment. He lived there with us, and the apartment was only 600 square feet.
Oh,
So
not,
it's
not easy
quite
to get away
small.
from them.
No, and he would take things. He would steal from my purse, my pockets, my son. He would take money out of my son's room. You know, just did whatever he wanted, and it was at our expense. So I was trying to play referee between him and my son and trying to defend myself as well. And it was getting to be a little much.
Yeah.
And so
So this is not the father of your son?
no, the father of my son, no, he's fine. Like he's, no, this was another man who did nothing but criticize the father of my son, said he was a terrible father, and, you know, basically told him at one point how he should be behaving as a father. And
Right.
because this guy felt that he had nothing wrong with him.
Yeah.
He was perfect, but everybody around him was wrong.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They were the ones with the issues. So anyway, I finally decided, with the help of a church minister and a very good friend of ours, to take the leap and step away from him. And that was the second time I was with him. I went back to him after the first time. I had him put in jail for 30 days the first time, and for uttering death threats and stuff. And then I went back to him. I believed everything he told me, how he'd gone through the John Howard Society for anger management, and he was going to do all these wonderful things, and he didn't do any of them. So, but I had gone back to him and moved from where we were up here down to Kitchener, and he was worse the second time. But since all of this has happened, and I've written the book and everything, and I've been away from him for years, I have since found out that he sexually assaulted my son. And
dear.
I had no idea. And apparently it happened both times we lived with him. And I used to say to my son all the time, if anybody touches you inappropriately, and you know, you explain that to your kids, you need to come and tell me.
Yeah.
You'll never be in trouble for telling me, ever.
Right.
Well, he wouldn't, because my husband was threatening to kill me if he said anything. So my son, who is now 30 years old, is still struggling with everything he went through. He's been away at a facility, a mental facility, twice, 2 months each time. He lives there. And he's just gotten out a week ago, and he seems better. He also has personal counseling that he's done before he went to this facility.
Yes.
He has lots of support, but he still struggles, right?
Yes.
And so he's working through it, and he's decided that he's writing his story. And his story, well, it'll be therapeutic for him, the same as it was for me, right? His story, he's going to name his stepdad. I changed his name in my book.
Yeah.
Because David was younger, we were still living very close to him, and I didn't want the hassle. I don't want him coming near us. I just wanted to share my story because I think people need to know that, yes, you can step away from it, and yes, people will put their arms around you and help you. But you have to, there's certain things you have to do to protect yourself before you step away, right?
Yes.
And, you know, when things happen, you have to be able to tell somebody, doesn't matter who, just make sure somebody is aware of what's going on in your home life.
Right.
So that all of a sudden, if you're not around, somebody can tell your story, right?
Yes.
So anyway, he's going to write his story, and he's going to name his stepdad. He said he doesn't care. He's going to write the book under his own name, whereas I used the pen name because of where we lived in proximity to where he was our neighbor. He stayed on our street and moved a couple doors down.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how that goes for him. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's tough. I didn't know what to expect when you would share your story, but it hits really close to home.
Yeah.
I still remember the days when I had all that violence in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, for my own story, is a little bit about, it was gradual. It wasn't like constant or everything like that, but it was so impactful that I was so trapped in my own head and being in love with this man, my ex-husband,
Yeah.
that it was just like, I didn't want to give up on the marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're fighting for somebody to change so much, like my codependency was like, I don't know, like the size of this room,
Yeah.
you know, and it didn't hit me until I was 43. So when I was 43 and finally succumbed to letting myself break down, because I held everything together, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I had already been separated from him since 1996.
Oh, wow.
But I carried that around. Like I had to go as far as burying him. Like literally in my imagination, I have a huge imagination. And I would take a shovel and I would dig a grave. And then finally, when it was big enough, I pushed him in and I covered him up. That's how far I had to go.
Yeah.
It sounds morbid, but when you're so attached to your abuser, you have to do something really extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever experienced anything like that.
Well, no, not quite. But I mean, when you're emotionally connected, I think the trick is you have to park your emotions on a shelf, which is not easy to do. I mean, you've been through it, so you know. When you're emotionally connected, you can't think straight.
No.
You park your emotions. No, it's just like any other daily activity. You just snap into action and you do.
Yeah.
Right? And people are so terrified of change, whether it's good change or bad change.
Yeah.
People are terrified of change. Nobody likes it.
No.
So even though there's, you know, the grass is greener on the other side, to get over there, that's tough. You're stuck. Yeah. You're just sitting there and you're stuck.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Mine went on for 12 years, from 14 till I was 26.
Yeah.
So it's so young.
Yeah.
Like I met my ex-husband at 14.
Yeah.
And I did the whole thing with, I have a compulsive disorder with food as well.
Right. And
then I lost my children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was estranged from them for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was an escape from him, but it wasn't. Like I left with the intention of bringing my family back to Canada. I went to South America.
Oh.
And it's such an amazing story. And later on, I learned that one of the main reasons was why we were so attracted to each other was we both had very similar backgrounds of abandonment, adoption, and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
So the mental health issues between the two of us was just out of this world.
Yeah.
And his anger and my anger and the feeling of trying to have a healthy, happy life with children just wouldn't work because neither one of us had the awareness of how ill we were.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't, right? Because you're stuck.
Right.
It comes back to that.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad I didn't have kids with him. Once I saw what he was all about, it's like, no, that's definitely not going to happen.
Yeah. At least you had that awareness.
Yeah. And, you know, if I would have had a child with him, everything would have been my son's fault, right? Automatically. So it just wasn't going to happen, you know. So my son writing this book, I think he wants to help other people. And I think it's good for a younger person to express what they went through and how it made them feel and everything. And he's a hockey coach. He's a child and youth worker. So he already uses some of what he's learned in his life to help, like especially with being a child and youth worker. He's dealing with high-risk teens and things like that. So he's been able to really relate to the kids that he's working with, you know, which makes a huge difference. You know, it's unfortunate that he has that experience, really, but at least he's trying to use it in a positive way.
Absolutely, like your story, coming on, writing your book, coming on the Mental Health Warriors, being part of this movement to end the stigma around mental illness. Like that, we're all like next Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a show with 5 other women and more if possible, up to 10. We can have up to 10 people, but it's all going to be about women in our mental health, because there's so many topics that stem from the stigma. Like women have stigmas, men have stigmas. I saw a lovely post by Adam the other day. Oh, we have a comment here. Let me see if I can read it here. Oh, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Adam. I saw that they both wrote, "Change is scary. Thank you so much for sharing. It helps to know other..." Well, I can actually post this, but I think it's a little long. Helps to know other women have been able to get out and share the journey of overcoming. What's the name of the book? Well, that's a great time to introduce your book.
Here it is. It's called Garbage Belongs at the Curb, Surviving Domestic Violence. And it's written under a pen name, Shelley Ross, because as I mentioned, I didn't want to use my own name when I actually published. And my son was younger, and he knew where we were. So sure. It was extremely therapeutic for me to write this. There's a lot of stuff I did not put in it because I knew people that I know would be reading it, and a lot of things were embarrassing to me. So I kept some of the things out of the book. And my son tells me that when he writes his book, he's putting everything in. He doesn't care. He said, "Mom, you're going to be shocked." He says, "I'll tell you about it before I finish so that you don't just read about it." Because he's not going to hold back.
Wow,
so, whereas I did.
That's really deep.
I
am in the process of doing my book as well, and I have had so much difficulty writing it because it just triggers me a lot.
It does. It's not easy to write about yourself.
No, it's not. But it gives us a strength and a perseverance we know that even if one person picks up our book and reads the story and it helps them, then we've accomplished what we're looking for. And I absolutely want to read your book. You know, and many people that I've had on the show, many people that I've crossed paths with, I buy their books, I read their stories, and it inspires me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right? For sure. There's so much going on in the world, and so many people that don't know where to start to get help. And you know what? Let's face it, and I hope nobody takes offense to this, because you know there's counselors everywhere. But they're not quality counselors. You get people, they just hang a shingle and call themselves a counselor. And that's at our expense.
Absolutely.
If we go to them and we trust them and they don't have the proper credentials or experience, how can they help us? Are they just going to mess us up even more? Because that's already happened. I finally, since I moved up here in the last, I guess, 4 years, I finally found 2 counselors that were exceptional. I did all my counseling over the phone because of COVID. But the one program was supposed to be 12 weeks. I think it went 14 or 15 weeks. They told me, until you feel that you've gotten the help you need, we're just going to keep going.
Wow.
And I didn't pay for any of that.
Awesome.
I kind of snuck through and got a referral and got all the counseling covered by OHIP.
Nice.
Yeah. And the second counselor
Your story
I
is
had,
really inspiring because you know what? I've heard so much negativity about getting help and the long waits and everything.
well, that's the other piece. And I really didn't wait that long.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I did it. I tried to get a referral from my family doctor. All they wanted to do was send me to the local hospital because they have a mental health unit.
Yeah.
I went there and the guy was a joke. He was an absolute joke. 1.5 hours into the sessions, he said to me, you know what, you seem pretty well put together. I don't think there's anything else I can do for you. And I said, well, you haven't done anything yet. Like you've done nothing. You don't even know me.
Yeah.
Well, you seem pretty well put together.
So you didn't feel you needed therapy.
Okay, well, I'm done with you. I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah.
So I went into, there's a family health team or something in Barrie, and unless you're a member of it, you can't get them to refer you for the counseling.
Okay.
The counseling came through Waypoint in Midland.
I've heard of Waypoint.
Yes, they are brilliant. They are brilliant. And I don't speak highly of counselors because I've had some bad ones over the years. So I really don't have anything good to say about them. But I went into Catholic Family Services in Barrie. I was in such a bad place emotionally. And I sat there in front of this woman. They gave me an hour of free counseling. You can just walk in off the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I just spilled my guts to her because I was really having a bad time. And at the end, I had said to her, I'm trying to get a referral to Waypoint. I understand their counseling is exceptional, but nobody will give me a referral. And she said to me, that's okay, Les. As soon as we're done here, we'll walk across the hall and I'll get the fella across the hall to give you a referral. I can't think of his name.
You're literally in the right place at the right time.
So he did the referral. And it was maybe 3 months later, they called me. I had an 1.5 hour intake meeting on the phone.
Yeah.
And not long after that, I started my counseling. I did CBT counseling, and I did PTSD. Yeah. And they were amazing. There was homework after each session. I met with them once a week. I did all my homework, and I was very detailed in writing whatever the answers to the questions were.
Right.
And we worked through them, and I learned so much about myself.
Yeah.
Doing that. That's the only time in my life, and I'm 58 years old. It's the only time in my life I've ever gotten anything out of counseling. So it's easy to say, oh, we'll just go to counseling. No,
it's difficult.
There's too many morons that think they're counselors. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Well, so, it's kind of like search and destroy, because when I went to Athena's sexual abuse counseling in Barrie, and the first time, my first 8-month stretch, I got all this anger out about the more current stuff.
Yeah.
But the counselor that I met with, she didn't dive into the stuff from my past very deeply.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh wow, I've done 8 months, I'm great, I'm fine, I'm good, whatever. And then I, got into the job, another relationship, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, a couple of years later, I'm back at their door because I knew there was still so much going on in me that there was something that needed to be dug up, or I had to get out, or whatever.
And there's triggers, right? One simple little thing. Somebody talks to you a certain way, whatever, and it just everything just starts coming out again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that it's not about what they're trying to share with you or what they're doing. It's just that something within you resonates, a memory, and it comes forward.
Yeah.
And it can be anything.
Oh, I know.
A smell, a movement, a look.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's so it's so prevalent.
Yeah.
And what is Elizabeth saying? Oh, this is great to post for viewers.
What's it say?
She says homework is good because it helps with releasing. Absolutely.
Yes, that's true.
When I was in my therapy, with Athena's. They got me to do this page, a drawing about my inner child.
Oh yeah.
And what she looked like in the past, what she looks like today.
Yeah.
And then what my adult self looked like then and now.
Oh.
It was so eye-opening. Oh my God. It was, I will show that. I have to remember to put it on the Mental Health Warriors one day, because how much it helped me to realize to learn to love myself. That's my company's name. But if I don't think if your counseling isn't helping you learn about yourself, then it ain't the right one for you.
No, that's right.
The second round was amazing. This woman, a lot of people say to me, "What? You let that woman say that to you?" But she said to me, Annette, when I started sharing what I was going through, she says, "Annette, you're toxic." Now, why would a counselor say to your face that you're toxic? But it resonated so deeply with me, the truth about my behavior and why people didn't want to be around me, that it kind of did like shock therapy. It was like, oh yeah. Oh, and I took a step back and I started thinking, am I toxic? So I went back and did my homework like that. Yeah. And the truth was, if I was standing in their shoes and realizing my behaviors, I would think that that person was toxic too.
or you're very negative, right?
Yeah, well, that's what you meant by it. I have to explain.
Because you don't know anything else. You've just been stuck for so long. You don't know anything else. Yeah. But it's true, once you start to release things, you start to feel better. Yeah. Like even my partner noticed the change in me. He'd come home from work and he'd be like, "Oh, wow, were you ever in a good mood?" He's like, "Oh yeah, my counseling was great today, and we did these things, and I actually feel better." And he'd be like, "Well, that's good, keep going." You know. So I mean, when you're on your own and you feel like nobody cares, right? You see everybody else is moving forward, doing things in life that you should be doing too, but because you've been with this bad person, you haven't done anything. You've just kind of gone backwards. I had all kinds of debt. I took all the debt just to get away from him. Yeah. I did a simple divorce. I divided all our things up equally. I gave him everything that was his. Yeah. I had his parents or his mom and his brother and sister come and get all his things. I packed everything. I said, "You've got this afternoon to come and get it, or he can buy it back at Sally Ann, because it's not staying here. It's in the middle of my living room, and it's leaving today one way or another." I did all that while he was in jail, because I didn't want to deal with him when he got out of jail. I didn't want him near me.
I was gonna say, how did if you wanted to share with it, and it might be in your book, what was your exit plan? Like, so other viewers can see how a woman who's been domestically in a violent relationship. So many women are in domestic violent relationships that don't know that you can actually plan an exit plan.
Well, you can, but you have to be so careful. Yeah. Because if he finds out, you're really in trouble. Yeah. And let's face it, some relationships are a lot worse than others. Some men are a lot more dangerous than others. Yes. I started, every time something would happen, I made sure my group of close friends knew every time something happened. Mm-hmm. I wasn't talking to my family at the time. I had walked away from my family. Yes. I have 3 brothers and a sister, and I didn't talk to any of them for I think about 8 or 9 years. So the only people I had was a handful of friends that I could trust. Right. Anything, I opened a new bank account, and I made sure that the statements, nothing came to my home. Everything went to a friend's home. Right. So there couldn't be an error, right? I opened it in a bank that I didn't deal with. So there could not be an error. The only address they knew was the address I provided them, which was a friend's address. Mm-hmm. I started putting little bits of money in there. Yeah. Now, really, I was the breadwinner because he couldn't hold a job. It didn't matter what you did. I would get him jobs, and he would have to, I guess he told the owners more times than not what they were doing running their business was wrong. So he'd end up fired, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was one of those. So I was the breadwinner, but you know, when you have somebody spending money and doing whatever they want, and you're trying to carry everything, that's tough on one income. And my income wasn't great. So every time I had the opportunity, I would put some money away. I started selling Avon because Avon had a cash situation, a bonus situation where if you signed up a certain number of ladies, they give you $750 cash. Okay, well, I could really use that $750, so I did that. And I also I sold their product and that, but I didn't make a lot of money selling the product. But and then I made chocolates. I have a custom chocolate business, which I still do. But back then, just to make ends meet, I made chocolates. I did corporate orders. I did little church sales. You know, Christmas craft shows, things like that. And I made lots of cash. So I threw all that cash in that bank account. And then we went to church one Sunday, and after church, we were sitting at Tim Hortons with our friend and the minister, and they noticed bruising on David's arm, like this, right? So the minister asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, it's nothing." So then he told our friend Diane what had happened, that my husband had grabbed him and stuff. So then we had the chat at the table. You really need to go to the police. You need to do something about this. So I made sure my son was involved, and he was okay with it too. I wanted him to be actually part of it. And we left there and we went to the police station and we both did statements. And the police made sure we had money for something to eat. And they said, "Don't go home until we call you. We'll go get him." So they went and got him. And that was the second time. The first time I did it the same way. Well, the first time he was arrested at work. And they kept him for 30 days because every time he was in court, I made sure I was there to make sure they didn't run red, make sure nobody posted a surety for him. But it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a long time to plan it, and you have to be so careful. And if your kids, well, it doesn't really matter what age your kids are. Kids are honest.
Yeah.
And if the abuser is asking the kid a question, they're going to scare the answer out of them, right? They're going to keep on them until they scare the answer out of them. So you have to be very careful not to discuss anything in front of your kids. Like, that's huge, a huge rule. Do not do that because you're putting them in harm's way.
Yeah.
And if they know nothing, they can't say anything. So you can plan it without them knowing. You can even get their things ready without them knowing if you're the one that has to leave. In my case, I had him removed both times.
Yeah.
So it made it easier because then, you know, my son's things were still all there. We didn't lose anything that way.
Yeah.
The only problem was he knew where we were, and he would come around. I had to go get a peace bond because he wouldn't stop coming by the apartment. My son's one friend saw him trying to force the window of the apartment open because we walked down a few steps to get into our place. And he was there messing with the window, trying to get in.
I can't even imagine. Like what I went through sounds like a holiday compared to what you've been through. Like the stress must have been out of this world.
Well, let me say something, and I don't know how many people.
I'm not downplaying what I went through.
No, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
No, it was bad.
Each situation is different.
Yeah.
Right. And my situation was actually worse than I thought. When I wrote this, I didn't know my son was sexually abused. I had no idea. He never said anything. So, but I think my thing, it took me a while to leave or to have him leave because it's easier knowing where they are.
Yes.
Than having to look over your shoulder, if that makes any sense. So while he was there, at least I knew where he was. I knew what he was, well, I kind of knew what he was capable of.
Sounds like, though, if I can interrupt you,
yeah.
It sounds like, though, even though you were in the relationship, you were not in denial about what was going on.
Oh no, no.
I was totally in denial.
Yeah, no. My thing was, because I was still emotionally connected. How can he do this to me? How can he do this to us? How can he be so mean?
That did happen to me.
You know, and you say that to yourself over and over, and you get so upset about it because of the emotional piece.
Yeah.
Once he upset me to the point where there was no turning back, now I parked my emotions.
Yeah.
And it was so much easier. It was just like taking care of anything else that comes up in life that you have to take care of.
Right.
But that took a long time to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had put him in jail, and I actually went to the jail and picked him up 30 days later, and then we got back together, and then we moved, the three of us.
They say, I believe the statistic is it takes up to 11 attempts to like finally get the courage or motivated or get the help to get out of domestic violence. I haven't looked at that statistic lately.
Yeah.
But back when I went for therapy, that's what it was.
Well, and it's scary. Like, how are you going to take care of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though I was the only one taking care of things financially, I was the only one working because he couldn't hold a job.
Yeah.
You still go through that. Like, where are we going to live? How am I going to take care of my son?
Yes.
You know,
like
it's scary.
the fear of leaving sometimes is stronger than the fear of being beat up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was one of the first things I ever asked my children when I was reunited with them was like, were you ever sexually assaulted? And all three of them said no.
Yeah.
But, you know, that little seed is still sitting there kind of simmering if they won't come out with it.
And for whatever reason.
Yeah, you know, I never came out with my story until I was 43. I never
Yeah.
shared it with a soul.
Yeah.
About everything that I've been through with my family.
Oh, I was very vocal, like to my friends. I was very vocal every time something happened. And when I decided I was going to write my book while I was still with him. So I had little pieces of paper with thoughts. It's I got to remember that. So I'd write it down and then hide it somewhere. Yeah. So I wasn't physically assaulted by him. I was emotionally assaulted. Like, the emotional stress was unbelievable. I started suffering migraines. God, I was having migraines, I don't know how many times a week. Once he was gone, my migraines pretty much stopped. It was all stress.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I experienced the same thing.
And I was on medication for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, our health is a signal. Our bodies are responding to the stress in a way it can.
Yeah.
To say, pain stands for pay attention inward now.
Yeah.
So having that, having those messages to us, if we would teach people that's what it is at a younger age, then they could understand more. Oh, I'm experiencing this pain. Something's wrong with me inside.
Yeah.
So, wow, thanks. That's incredible. And I'm very sorry you went through that. I'm very sorry that your son has gone through that. But they always, you know, you always hear that, you know, someone suffering can turn into something golden. And if your son is now helping other children because of his experiences, I'm that's a very proud thing for him to accomplish. But
you know what? This has all affected him in personal relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, because you're still struggling, right? So I can't read any of those. So.
Oh no, she says you find out so much once you're out and safe as well from the children. The children will now feel. Thank you, Elizabeth. The children will open up more once they feel that they're in a safe environment.
Yeah, it's funny because the second time I had him arrested, my son never slept at night. I think he slept with one eye open because of fear, right? Yeah. And now knowing what I know, that's probably very true. The night that he was put in jail, my son had the best sleep of his life. He got up the next morning. Oh my God, I was so worried about him. He was going to start high school the next morning. And he got up and ready, and he was bright and cheery, and I'm like, wow, this, are you sure you belong to me? Like, he was totally different. He went to school, he came home, like, it just seemed from that moment forward, he was a brand new person. He still had all the demons inside because of what he had been through, but the difference, I couldn't believe the difference. You know?
And as parents, I carried a lot of guilt around all of that.
Oh, I
stuff that
do.
happened
I
to my
still do.
kids.
I still do.
And one of the reasons why I am an activist with many people, like Elizabeth herself, and a lady named Galit in Israel, actually. She has a program called I Love Me and Children Are the Future. And she's very involved in helping children of incest and sexual violence. And it's like, how do we end this? How do we help people? Like, okay, starting with ourselves. So I totally believe that because of my experiences with my ex-husband and his abuse and traumas, that he's had his therapy, he's better now. And but those traumas, if they're not dealt with, manifest in, I believe, in being a pedophile, being a rapist, being a physical abuser, and anybody. And violence stems from so many different things.
Oh, yeah.
So being active in my own self-care has helped me get through, like my paper up there says artist colored her way through PTSD issues. So coloring is my self-care method to treat anything that I can instantly feel anxiety come on, depression come on, right? And then I have to start taking a step back and doing more self-care. If I step away from self-care too much, and I put my attention too much on other people and their care, I fall down a rabbit hole.
No,
so,
that's understandable.
So what does self-care look like to you? Can you share a little bit about what you do now for self-care? Your chocolates?
My chocolates, and that's, I mean, I love people. I love talking to people. And so when I do Christmas shows and things like that, I'm talking to everybody.
Right.
And I love the fact that I have a product that people enjoy. And they actually come back and buy more. So it must be good.
Oh, your stuff is amazing.
So, so I continue to do that. Also, I've spoken at some women's shelters, just trying to share my story. And it's funny, when you go in, they're very standoffish, right? You're almost like the enemy when you first go in. But once you start talking to them and they see that, oh, wow, she's been through something similar that I've been through. Then they open up, and by the end, they talk to you, and, you know, they're a lot more comfortable with you. And I mean, in some cases, I've given books out to people. I meet people and I think, you need this. You really need this. So I give the book to them and I say, you know what, when you're done with it, pass it on to somebody else. If you meet somebody that you think one little bit of that story will help, then please just pass it. You know? So like, if I can, when I learn about somebody that's in a situation, if they're okay with talking to me, I'll go and talk to them and tell them, you know, what I did to help myself. And, you know, not everything is going to work for everybody. Like, you kind of have to investigate a little bit and figure out your own strategy. But to me, that's all self-care because I'm helping somebody else. I'm kind of reliving what I went through, but it's been long enough now that it's doable for me. Right?
I got the from some of the literature that I've read. I went through a whole phase of reading every spiritual literature out there, self-help books and things, and anxiety workbooks. You name it, I did it. That the I think I've lost my train of thought. Basically, if you are out there giving, right, it's so healing. It is, you know, and all of us that have been traumatized through one form or another of violence has this really deep-seated need to be loved and love.
Yep.
Right. And that was my biggest thing. I wanted to reach out to people with my coloring books and cards, with my messages, and get people sharing, keep the message going. And I don't know if you knew, today is Suicide Prevention Day.
No, I didn't.
So, viewers, if you have a friend that is struggling, please reach out to them. It is Suicide Prevention Day. And I myself have made a post about it on my Facebook page. And even just a simple hello sometimes just opens a floodgate of a conversation. You know, whoever is struggling, sometimes we don't even know we're struggling because we're trying to hold it together.
And a lot of people are good at holding it together.
Yeah.
You
It's the
wouldn't know to-
masks.
You wouldn't know to look at them.
No,
Right?
you wouldn't. Everybody thought that my husband and I had the most amazing marriage, but they didn't know what was behind the doors.
Yeah.
All the verbal abuse, all the sexual indiscretions,
Yeah.
and you know, if you don't do this, then I'll do this kind of threats. You know,
Yeah.
those threats.
Yeah.
And it wears on you.
Sure it does.
And so, yeah, if I had half the knowledge I have today,
Oh, yeah, me
I would have
too.
left my ex-husband a long time ago.
Me too. Me too.
But you know, you can only do the best you can with the stuff you have at the moment.
Yeah.
And
And I'm very critical about myself. I worry so much about what people think of me.
Mhm.
I will beat myself up about it. I'm terrible with that. I'm getting a little better. But if I can, and maybe that's partly what brought me out and made me help people,
Yeah.
you know, because of the way I was made to feel.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, you have something that very important to share, and the more I believe the stigma around mental illness, I am fully believe is caused because of traumas.
Sure it is.
There are people who believe it's generational, and that it's in
it
our
can
DNA.
be, I think it can be.
It very well could be. Like, my ancestry is indigenous, right? So I don't even know. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface about indigenous stuff and maybe the abuse my mother went through or my grandmother went through.
Yeah.
But you know, if it's in our DNA, then that too, I believe, can be changed with awareness, right? With education about everything.
Yeah, and I think you have to be open to looking at getting help.
Yeah.
And like I stepped away from getting help for a long time because, like I say, the counselors I had, I wasn't getting what I needed. But now that I've had the last two, and now that I feel so much better, you know, I would point people in that direction. But if you're not comfortable with the counselor, I think you got to keep shopping.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth would like to know if you can get your book on Amazon.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so your self-care is writing your book, doing your chocolates.
Yeah.
Tell everyone where we can find you, like on Facebook, Instagram.
Okay, so I am on Facebook. There is a page, Garbage Belongs at the Curb. I also have a page for my custom chocolates. It's Eve's Custom Chocolates. And I'm actually writing another book. I've finished it, kind of, sort of. It's a kid's book.
Oh, nice.
And it's a picture book, so it's for younger kids. And it gently touches on anxiety, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
So it's not published yet. I'm going to try and publish it by the end of the year. We'll see.
Yeah.
I have 2 other kids' books I'm working on too. So
nice.
I figure, you know what, if you can put subtle little messages in, so you know, as they're starting out, it kind of helps them out. I mean, because kids suffer anxiety going to school for the first time.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, going just to a play group, whatever. they suffer anxiety in every part of their lives. Some of them can handle it, some of them can't. So I figured if I can just put like a subtle little message, hopefully that'll help. So, but right now you can find me on Facebook under Garbage Belongs at the Curb or Eve's Custom Chocolates. So, yeah.
Wow. So if there was something, is there something your son does for self-care? You know?
Well, he coaches AAA hockey.
Oh,
And so he's around people constantly. He keeps himself surrounded by people. If you met my son is about 6'1", great big shoulders on him, good looking dude. Seems so well put together. Yeah. Like when I shared the fact that he was away for a couple months in this facility, and everybody I told, they were like, why? What's wrong with him? Well, you know, he's been struggling because of things that happened. And no way, like he's fine. I saw him. He's fine. You would not know there's a thing wrong with him. He is perfect when you meet him.
Yeah.
He can converse. He's calm, very well put together.
Yeah.
But inside, he just fell to pieces.
Yeah.
You know? So he keeps himself busy. If that's his self-care, he keeps himself busy.
Yeah.
He's off work right now because of his struggles. But you know, he's got to do what he's got to do, right?
Was there a point like for both of you that it was like it's do or die? I have to get out of this mess I'm in.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
If I would have known what he was going through, what had happened to him, yeah, I would have dealt with things a little differently, right? And I certainly wouldn't have stayed as long as I did. There wouldn't have been a second time.
Yeah.
That we went back to him.
Did he? Because Galit, she helps people point out the signs. Did you see any signs? I'd like the viewers to know a little bit before we close up here.
I didn't see, as far as the sexual part of it, I didn't see anything. What I was so busy defending my son when we were all at home because my husband would be picking on him, constantly picking on him. If my son went to the kitchen to get a drink or anything, my husband would follow him in there. Don't you take a large glass of milk, you take a small glass of milk. Whereas I was, you know, I would always say to him, if you want a large glass of milk, just drink as much milk as you want. You're a kid, drink as much milk as you want. I don't care. But he would go in and he would follow him. He was constantly telling him that he was going to be a young offender and calling him a fag and like just berating him constantly. So I was constantly defending my son. But I never saw anything to do with the sexual part of it, ever.
Yeah.
It just, I was exhausted from it, from having to have eyes in the back of my head and defending. Like I was exhausted. So it had to come to an end.
Yeah. So do you feel that there's a need for you to have therapy about what your son went through, or did you do that?
I did speak to my therapist about it. Yeah. Because once I found out about it, like I blame myself 1,000% for everything he's going through because it's my fault. He was my son. I was the adult. My role as a parent was to protect him from perpetrators, right? And I didn't do that. And I actually put him back in front of the guy the second time. Yeah. And now that I know about this sexual assault or abuse, I kick myself in the guts all the time over it. Like I hold myself responsible. And everybody's like, no, you shouldn't do that. No, it's over. You shouldn't do that. Well, no, because you know what? I changed my son's life forever by putting him in that situation. My son has struggles daily because I put him in that situation. So how am I supposed to feel? And I take full responsibility because I'm the one that did it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, when I hear people say shoulda, coulda, woulda, it's really I don't mean to say ignorant in the sense that somebody's stupid, but people are not educated that when someone's family has gone through a traumatic thing, that a person has to process their own way of dealing with it, you know, help getting their therapy for it, or process it, come to a conclusion of it, or at least an acceptance of it.
Yeah.
Like with myself and all the acceptance I had to do with, I left my children in the care of a very abusive man.
Yeah.
And there was no way I could reach them. And
yeah, that had to be tough.
it was
Oh my God.
either if I went back there and tried to do something for them, I know he would have killed me.
Yeah.
Right? If he ever watches this one day, I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, you have to be deeply honest with yourself to realize when it comes to domestic violence, there is no ever completely forgiving yourself for something.
No.
But there's a realization that you didn't know. And what could you have done different? You could have, if you had known.
Now listen, I went back a second time.
But you didn't know.
I knew what he was like. I didn't know about the sexual abuse, but I knew what he was like in every other way because we had already lived that with him and I had already put him in jail.
Yeah.
So one of my messages to people is if you think you're going to go back to him and you think he's going to change to become whatever you want him to be, you can't change somebody. So don't beat yourself up trying. It's not going to work. And I listened to everything he said to me. He went through counseling while he was in jail. He went to the John Howard Society for anger management. He did all these things, and I trusted in what he told me because I was still emotionally connected to him. And I went back to him a second time, just so he could continue to sexually abuse my son. I had no idea that was happening. When he was put away the first time, if I would have known that had happened, boy, things would have played out a lot differently, I can promise you. Yeah. And there's no statute of limitations on sexual abuse or assault. So I've said to my son, you know, if you need closure, is that something you would do, is go to the authorities? He's decided not to go to the authorities. He figures he'll pay for it in other ways, like my husband. And he's decided that the way he wants to handle it is by writing his story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and he's an adult, so I have to let him make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I want to deeply thank you again for this very deeply moving topic, and you know, I hope that we can have another interview, maybe you know, in the future, and talk more about helping people. And, lighter topic maybe.
Yeah, you never know.
But thank you everyone for tuning in today, and again, reach out to someone you love today, please, because it's Suicide Prevention Day. And if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe. We're also on various platforms that you can listen to us on audio. If you have any questions, you can contact me on Learn to Love Myself or through the Mental Health Warriors. And I hope you have a most fabulous day.
Just push the button.
Yep.
Oh,
this should be unlocked.
This way?
Push that one. Yep.
Okay.